right, look at episode 65 of the Breaking Balls podcast. Bob, another week and another rain-shortened race from NASCAR, but no one happier to see it this week than William Byron, who takes home his fourth race of the year, and rumor has it, Michael McDowell's still not out of gas.
You know, it was a great weekend, though, for racing in Atlanta. Obviously, you got Richard Childress leading the field. He was the only part of the Dillon Childress family that led the field this weekend, but otherwise, it was a good weekend for everyone else.
Gentlemen, start your engines, brothers!
All right, everybody, welcome to episode 65 of the Breaking Balls podcast. We are back. We are fresh out of Atlanta. Adam, I'm feeling great. I'm also feeling like I was robbed a little bit. I think, 70 laps shy of a full race here. Rain delay or rain-shortened race, but, I mean, goodness gracious. What we did get on the track, there was action today.
Yeah, I don't think I'm actually in a healthy enough physical condition to have lasted an entire Atlanta race because there was a lot going on this entire time. I was on the edge of my seat just about the entire time. I thought I was no more than like one more time of Martin Truex trying to make the very top of the racetrack work from having a heart attack. I mean, there was just so much action going on that it felt like we were just kind of teetering on the edge of danger the entire time. I was highly skeptical going into this race, Bob, but it turned out to be massively entertaining.
I went in cautiously optimistic, and I don't know why. Obviously, the super speedway action hasn't been great this year. Obviously the passing, they haven't been able to generate the third line really, but this is the first time we've seen the super speedway package at night. And with the track cooler, you're going to have more grip. These guys could send it in there, and I mean, they were battling all night long just to hold on to the car. I mean, it wasn't lack of passing for sure. It was urgency all night, especially once you add in the imminent weather coming in. You didn't know when the race was going to end. It was almost like a ticking time bomb saying, hey, we're going to put our hand in the bag and pull out a random number, and this number is going to be when the race ends. And you're not going to know it, but we're going to know it. And Mother Nature was pretty much that. I mean, my heart was racing the last, 70 laps or so that we got, whether it was battling towards that stage end, during the stage end, wondering if people were going to pit or stay out. And then you're thinking, once stage 3 starts, any second now, the rain is coming, and anxiety was creeping in.
Yeah, we often talk about how, NASCAR broadcast booths take a lot of heat because they don't build any suspense in the race. I think one of the things that, especially as you watch an F1 race or an IndyCar race, the announcers do a very good job of kind of manufacturing moments within a race, but I got to tip my hat to the entire NBC crew because the second that we figured out that there was going to be any sort of rain in this forecast, I mean, it was an hour and a half away and we were already building towards it. Just the way that it was just kind of this rain cloud that was approaching the track like it was some sort of apocalyptic death. I mean, it truly was kind of hilarious to hear them talk about it, but it just really put a magnifying glass at the strategy towards the end of the race. We've buried the lead as much as we can, and that's something we don't like to do on this podcast. So congratulations to William Byron, who was named the winner of this race. I mean, just one of those things where I didn't necessarily think this was going to be where he was going to get his fourth win just because of how the day went, especially with the spin in lap 80, but a lucky dog here, a good car and getting through the field there, and all of a sudden William Byron was in a position to take the checkered flag.
Yep, and obviously he is probably Hendrick's best super speedway guy, one of the better Chevys on the super speedway consistently the last few years. So the track style definitely sets up for him. But like you said, Ad, spins on lap 80. Before that had a penalty on pit road where I believe it was an uncontrolled tire the crew lost and went out of the box. And then he sets up, he's back in the pack, and once you're back there, you can get caught up in anything. And he gets kind of spun there, loses the car the front stretch, but no damage. Down a lap, comes back slowly but surely, and the way the strategy kind of set up toward the end, he was one of the guys that was a player toward the end with a fast car, and at the end of the day, sometimes you got to be lucky too, but William Byron consistently has found himself at or near the top of the field in most of these races this year. There's a handful of races where he hasn't been competitive, but other than that, it's all about track position at a race like Atlanta, and especially when you add in a delay imminent at any point, 70 laps, 80 laps toward the end, whenever it was going to be, you've got to be at the front. Otherwise, you have no chance. And William Byron found himself at the front at the end. There were guys that were faster than him today, sure, 100%. But when it mattered, again, he was there.
Yep, the best ability is availability. I say it all the time, and he bought a ticket, and that's all you really have to do to win is you got to show up to the dance, that type of thing. And opportunity knocked, and he answered. I mean, it's a lot of credit to that team for kind of never giving up. And we talk about stick-to-itness. I mean, early on in this race, Bob, it looked like it was going to be Ford. I mean, Ford had a ton of speed, a ton of drivers in the top 10 at the beginning of the race. And then as things kind of developed, we even saw the Toyotas come together, as they usually do, especially in super speedway type scenarios. They do a very good job of kind of working together and really kind of generating speed. But at the end of the race, you look at the top of the leaderboard, and it's a bunch of bow ties. It just seems kind of indicative of the whole season here.
Yeah, and this is Byron's 4th win of the year now. He breaks that tie with Kyle Busch for 3 on the year. He goes to 4. Look, it was very different than last week where you had a rain shortened ending and then it goes to rain delayed beginning and then it's shortened by darkness at the end. So you knew where you were going to end last week. You knew lap 75 was going to be that checkered flag at the Chicago Street Course. Tonight it was very different, but same style though. You've got to be flexible in the Cup Series. You've got to be able to adapt. The different kind of track, but different kind of delay. But at the end of the day, you're still not going the full distance. And for William Byron, like you said, Fords were especially strong early on today. Qualifying, obviously, we might as well get into it because these are, now back-to-back races now we've got that have been shortened from NASCAR, but they've absolutely banged. I mean, these have been incredible races between now Chicago and now Atlanta. But the strategy really played a factor here because everyone knew the rain was coming, whether it was going to be at the end of Stage 3 or early into Stage 3. The one thing that really jumped out to me was Brad Keselowski. I was sitting there on my TV going, don't pit when Stage 3 came out. He pits, and it did pay out for him. I think he, P5, P6, but, there were just so many little things like that the rain added in just for a viewership standpoint.
Yeah, it seemed like every single decision that was made by a lot of drivers, it seems like every week there's one decision that gets made by, 1 or 2 teams that really puts an impact on the race. And it felt like those consequential decisions were happening every single time a yellow flag came out. And I think that's the beauty of NASCAR in some respects is that sometimes it's better to be lucky than it is to be good. And William Byron proved that today. I mean, he was a lot of luck, a lot of, not a ton of strategy, really. It was just kind of right place, right time type of things that kept going on. But, just the different decisions that you saw guys make, including Michael McDowell, who at the end, I don't know, his car had to be running on hopes and dreams. I don't really know what was powering that car except for maybe love.
Literally loves gasoline. The sponsorship on the car was probably worth at least a gallon or 2. Good God, Ad. It was very timely for the sponsor.
It's one of those things where it's like, Sunoco Racing Fuel does what it can, but they had to have had an extra little bladder of loves in there somewhere because I have no idea how he ended up holding on, but it just seemed like you were kind of like, we were texting back and forth. It was like, when is he going to run out of gas? And I think there was no one more relieved when they finally brought the cars parked onto pit road than Michael McDowell because he didn't have to worry about running out of gas on the track.
They were saying, when it was actually green, you got about 4 laps left, and then you have the spin come out, and NASCAR's running all these caution laps, waiting to basically call the race, and we'll get into that whole decision there. But for Michael McDowell, they were almost calling his bluff, saying, you wanted to stretch it out? We're going to see how long you can stretch it out here until the rain inevitably came down. But, man, listen, credit to the 34 team. Great call there, to stay out. They maximized their points. We'll obviously talk about the playoff situation here in a little bit, but that was something that they needed. Him and Daniel Suarez both were basically praying for that rain to come out for results-wise. But, even Brad Keselowski, we mentioned where, he was going to stay out, had about 14 laps after the stage break to come out and risk it, but he ends up pitting, getting all 4 tires too, which I thought was very questionable. It ends up working out for him. Listen, played the long game. That's why he's a car owner and not me, I guess. At the end of the day, I can do my NASCAR Thunder Dynasty all I want, but I will never be Brad Keselowski and hand up. I admit that. So, Brad, All you, brother. All you.
Yeah, it just seemed like every part of the competitor that is Brad Keselowski probably wanted to stay out, but at the end of the day, you couldn't really throw the baby out with the bathwater there. I mean, they were having a very good day. Had track position, had a really good run of things, and of course, I think nobody wants to get back into victory lane more than Brad Keselowski, but at the same time, he's still above the playoff cut line, I believe. I almost positive he's still above the playoff cut line without looking. And this finish helps. And at the end of the day, as long as there's no new winners, I didn't love the decision because obviously if you're going to go out and race, you want to win and you want to get that race win. But at the end of the day, points seem to be at a premium. And, big ups to that team, and especially for Brad Keselowski for being able to make that kind of calm, level-headed decision and just be like, look, let's just take the points here and make this work on new tires. And ultimately, it worked out for him.
Worked out for him. He was probably holding his breath for those first couple laps when the stage first started because he was, back there a little bit. But, obviously works his way up there and he's battling there. I think he was P4, P3 once the caution comes out there right before we do red flag it from rain. We might as well get into it though because that is the main topic of conversation. At least just reactionary on Twitter I've noticed is that NASCAR running those kind of, if you will, pace laps until it rained enough to red flag that race at the end. I'm just curious from your perspective there. I've got some thoughts as well. But how do you feel NASCAR handled that whole situation there toward the end?
They're doing the best they can. I think obviously there's a microscope on these types of decisions, especially with what we saw at Daytona last year. Just kind of the spontaneous rain that nobody really saw coming, and the the havoc that really wreaked on the race, and how dangerous that was. We talked about it at length on this podcast, how dangerous we thought it was, and how you've got to have better systems in place to kind of make sure that these types of things don't happen. And lo and behold, what does NASCAR go out and do? They completely revamp their system of how they evaluate whether or not to stop things for whether or not they put people outside the track. They between the radars and actually having people outside the track telling them what is going on. I think they've done a very good job of trying to get themselves the most up-to-date information. As a race fan, I hate it. I think you would have loved to see them at least try to get back on the track and race, but I think from a safety perspective, I don't want to see a repeat of Daytona or have guys, going 180 miles an hour into the corner and then all of a sudden losing grip through no fault of their own. So, as much as I don't love it, I do understand it. What about you, Bob?
That's the thing. I mean, it sucks as a fan. You're robbed of not only the full distance of a race that had the potential of being one of the best of not only the season, but in recent memory. You also just are robbed of, that feeling of, well, not only are they not going to, race until it gets red flagged for rain, but we're going to parade around and you almost know the inevitable is coming. It's a tough visual and a tough, pill to swallow as a fan. But like you said, the precedent's been set. If they didn't, who's to say they go green for another 3 or 4 laps and, we're racing until we can't race anymore. What's that level? Where we wreck again like Daytona? Or, it's a slippery slope there. Even New Hampshire a couple years ago where, you're 15, 20 laps into the race there. You take out basically your entire Toyota field there when Kyle Busch goes back into the wall there and, he bumps into the pace crafter in retaliation. You've had this before where, the rain has been coming and NASCAR hasn't called it in time. So I'd rather them call it too early than too late and have all these torn up race cars and risk safety and, all this, damage costs. But, as a fan, again, it is a tough pill to swallow just because the racing was so damn good. But listen, there's no perfect world here, Ad.
Yeah, I think that's the part that bums me out the most about this is that if it wasn't for the rain delay, we would be talking about how awesome of a race this was because at the end of the day, there was so much action in this. I think, so much of the broadcast, they refer to Atlanta kind of as like this, kind of playing high-speed chess or, you have to make these decisions so quickly. And, the runs develop in an instant, it seems like. It seems like, you can go from being about a car length behind somebody to all of a sudden, getting to the bumper and being able to move guys around. And it's a shame that this race that had so much action and so much aero racing and so much side drafting and things that, oftentimes people will say, oh my gosh, like this doesn't happen in NASCAR. You just don't see it as much. And it's a shame that a race like this ended under weird conditions, under a red flag, because I would have loved to have seen it go the entire way. But I get it. It's a safety thing. You can't have guys going, damn near 200 miles an hour into a wet patch unexpectedly. So do I like it? No. Do I understand it? Absolutely.
Exactly. And like you said, because the racing was great, high-speed chess is a great way to describe it. I mean, the track is just like Daytona and Talladega, where it's almost restrictor plate style. Everyone is tight. It's all train style, accordion style runs. But it's different in the fact that it's, a little bit over a mile and a half. So it's, a mini version of Talladega and Daytona. And there's no time to plan out these runs. They just happen. They're reactionary. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide. You're full out the whole way in a oval track, basically. It's a wild concept that I'm kind of shocked, frankly, it works. I know people were skeptical when they built it last year to see how it works. But, especially at night, I think it was pretty damn good racing. Like we've said, obviously it seems like the restrictor plate style where Ford definitely was the upper hand as far as speed-wise. You look at qualifying, I think they were the top 8 in the spring race. They were strong to start in that spring race, and then, Joe Logano wins. You look at qualifying again today, or this weekend, I think 8 of the top 10, again, Fords. Kyle Larson was in there, I believe, and then I am blanking on the other person in the top 10. But regardless, the Fords, for whatever reason, when it's just these, zero drag, just fall out races, these tracks, they have speed. And then anytime you have to kind of let up in these turns, any, oval banked races, Ford struggle. So, obviously you thought they were going to have speed coming in. Penske and RFK just really were the class of the field today. Penske was 1, 2, and 3 for a long while, the first 100 laps or so, even though they really didn't end up in the finishing order that high as far as what they should have. But again, RFK as well. Buescher and Keselowski. At the end, look who's there. Look who's tandem. It's Penske and RFK. The Fords just seemed like when they're at a track like this, they are hard to beat.
Yeah, it just seems like they've got a good hive mentality. They work together very well. I think it was very impressive to, obviously I was excited last week because Austin Cindric was kind of back in the top 10, and he kept things going. He hung around again this week, with all the Penske guys. I think it was good to see Joey Logano run well. I don't know. It just seemed like Penske, especially. I think RFK, they kind of lucked into a little bit of, getting the track position towards the end there and, having them both be up there. But it seemed like Penske really just kind of grabbed hold of this race. I can think of a little bit of time where I thought the Toyotas were going to make a huge run. But for the most part, Bob, it just seemed like it was Penske. It was Blaney, Logano, and Cindric just kind of going around, especially on that high line. I got very scared at the beginning of this race because it was about 8 Fords, or 6 Fords probably lined up in a straight line, and I was like, holy crap, we're going to see an F1 race here in Atlanta, to where all of a sudden one guy's going to get out in front and everybody else is just going to follow him for the entire time. And luckily the racing lines opened up, Toyota came to play, but you're 100% right, Bob. The way that Ford came out, I thought they were going to completely dominate this thing.
And Eric Almirola comes out on pole. You noticed that Stuart Haas was fairly fast in qualifying, but they didn't really have it in actual race trim. Ryan Preece was up there a little bit, but as far as Kevin Harvick, not really a factor today outside of his pre-lap race with Richard Childress, which, by the way, great whole, tribute there. That was probably the coolest thing we've done for Harvick all year, having that 29 out there racing next to him. But, outside of that, Briscoe wasn't really there. He spun, I believe, at some point tonight. I don't know. FRM was probably the third best Ford team because you had Todd Gilliland up there. He got shuffled back toward the end right before the rain, but he was running top 10 for a lot of the night. And then Michael McDowell, like we said, turned nothing into something there. So the Fords had a lot of speed, but again, like you said, the Chevys were the one in the victory lane at the end of the day. It just rinse and repeat. It just kind of feels like that's kind of the way it goes this year, whether it's Toyota, Ford, Chevy. It doesn't matter. Chevy's just kind of find the way. But, listen, Toyota did find the upper lane because Tyler Reddick and Martin Truex Jr. Say what you want about super speedway packages. The third lane this year has been non-existent. Toyota was doing their damnedest to find it tonight, Ad. Martin Truex, you mentioned it tonight. He was trying it.
No, 100%. It was kind of wild because you saw both of them go up there and try it, both of them being Martin Truex Jr. and Tyler Reddick. I mean, it was so crazy to see because you were like, you hadn't seen, you're not used to seeing three lines in a NASCAR race anymore. It seems like you either get one, maybe two if you're lucky, but to kind of see that third lane open up, I mean, I don't know. It just seems like the more comfortable the drivers get at this track in Atlanta, the more the racing lines seem to open up. And I don't know. There's something about this track. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me right now. Obviously, Bob, I'm kind of like you to where, you kind of scratch your head because you don't exactly know why the racing is ending up being so good. But at the end of the day, all I know is I really enjoyed watching it. I mean, there was a ton of passing. I mean, that was the big thing for me is that it was like, there wasn't a ton of passing for the lead and stuff like that, especially kind of, during the races. But back in the pack where they were going three wide, and it just seemed like, man, it just seemed like every inch on this racetrack mattered. And you don't say that often at every track. It seems like, sometimes guys are just coasting around and waiting for their time to make a move. And I don't know whether it was the rain or the track, but it definitely felt like there was a sense of urgency that was created around this track that you don't often get, and it really made for a heck of a race.
100%. Whether it was the action just in mid-pack, I mean, listen, Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman last week, Hamlin got Bowman around, takes his day for, the turn. Bowman got him right back, spun him around. So even stuff like that, we've got the beef even. I don't even know if it's really a beef, but you've got that stuff. You had Kyle Larson blow a tire randomly after spinning. They forgot to change the right front, and that thing basically just exploded like out of thin air. There was always something going on today, whether it was the pack racing or on and off the track. I mean, even Noah Gragson, listen, he had his weekly little spin, his little spill, his little hiccup. I mean, just felt like, this was probably, if not in the top three, it was definitely in the top half of the best races of the year because, I mean, if it wasn't for the rain, I mean, I'm really curious to see how that race ends because even the stage one ending in their ad where you had Logano, Blaney, and Larson kind of battling there for the stage win. I mean, it was clean racing, but it was so aggressive. It was very professional. I mean, you could definitely tell this was the highest level of racing with the Cup Series. But man, I wish we could have seen more of it because it was just such a great race. But go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just thinking, honestly, you said it and it kind of reminded me, but just think back to the end of stage one. I mean, you had Kyle Larson just shoot to the bottom of the racetrack to push things three wide and somehow made it stick and then to kind of drag race Blaney back to the line. I mean, there was little moments like that happened throughout this race that it was just, I keep thinking of all the little things that happened. Like the incident where Ty Gibbs and Ross Chastain got into each other. I mean, it's one of these things to where there was always something going on to the point to where you almost forget about you almost forget about it all because of the red flag finish and everything. But I don't know, man. I wish there was nothing staining this race because damn, it was fun to watch.
Yeah, and you're talking about the Ty Gibbs Chastain where old Corey LaJoie goes around there. Corey, not as exciting as last year's Atlanta race for Corey's wreck, but still does find a way to spill out there. But no, we might as well get into the finishing order here, Ad, because like I said, Penske had a lot of speed today, but Ryan Blaney finished 9th there, Cindric 12th, and then Joe Logano 17th. They really weren't indicative of the running order there, but like you said, top three were Chevys. Ford was speed all day, but even 4 of the top 5 because Kyle Busch slipped in there at 5. But Byron, Suarez, Allmendinger, McDowell, that top 4. Take out Byron, who's won 4 races now. I mean, those guys really needed those results. Where they're at in the playoff bubble, big days for them.
Yeah, 100%. I think, looking at the top 10 here, I think the name that pops out is AJ Allmendinger. Just another guy who made good decisions. kept his car safe, and then at the end of the race ended up making it work. Daniel Suarez kind of falls into that category of a guy who had a good car, but track position was key there towards the end, and he made it work. Bob, I thought we were going to get a redemption story after some are calling a boneheaded move in the Xfinity race. Justin Haley finishes 8th. I mean, heck of a day for Colin Racing looking at the top 10 here, to say the least. And, of course, there's always Ricky Stenhouse, who keeps finding finishes this year, and he rounds out the top 10. I mean, kind of crazy that, you're looking... It just seems like kind of a random mixture of a top 10, but I guess that's what you get when you get a rain-shortened race.
Yeah, I mean, J.J. Lee running 7th. I mean, he's had some good runs in that Rick Ware car that has notoriously been a slow car, to say the least, if not, the butt of jokes at the time.
I'm sorry, you mean Rocket
Rockets,
Ship.
yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
sorry.
Rick Ware Rockets, yes. But anyway, you look at Eric Jones, P11, he got into a couple incidents tonight, but, a good result for him, a team that has really treaded the wrong way this year. Todd Gilliland, 16th. It may not be the best result, but he had a good run today, as well as Chris Buescher in 15th. So, look, just guys that, like you said, may not necessarily be, at the top of the field normally. They had a chance this week to at least get some confidence maybe under their sails, because it wasn't just, the usual suspects up front. I mean, even Ty Dillon outran his brother, Austin Dillon. I mean, Ty ran 19th and Austin ran 21st. I mean, that's, like I said in the intro, Richard Childress was the only one of that family that was even near the front all day today, running that 29 car. But, I mean, it was just a backwards world where Ty is outrunning Austin on a super speedway.
Yeah, it was one of those things to where you almost considered Austin Dillon, if there was anybody that was hoping that we were going to continue running in the rain, given his track record of finding a way to the front in those sorts of situations. I think Austin Dillon may have had his fingers crossed a little bit. But, yeah, I don't know, Bob. It's one of these things to where it's like the race... I just wish we could have I wish we could have gone the entire time. I thought the strategy was really compelling the entire time, and I don't know. It's sad to say, it's my raw reaction. It's kind of, I can't get it out of my head. I can't get it out of my gut. I just wish we would have been able to finish this race, because I think, damn it, Mother Nature. Fuck, Mother Nature. God.
No, it's a shame, but I mean. One thing that I did want to mention, though, you had Byron winning today, but Hendrick is normally a decent super speedway team ad there. They've got a decent super speedway package. You had Byron win there, but Chase Elliot was 13th. He was never really toward the front at all today in a track that he won last year. He was the defending summer race winner coming in. Kyle Larson had some speed early, but obviously wrecks out P36. Then Alex Bowman kind of flirted toward the front there for a little bit, but then another result where he's 26th. I mean, you look at these finishing results, and we got 7 races left in the playoff standings, and we might as well, just kind of look at that. We're getting to the nitty gritty here. Chase Elliott's going to have to win at this point. I don't think they keep saying he's going to have to point his way in, or he has a chance to. It's going to be really, really tight. The room for error is very slim. So, guys like Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, even AJ Allmendinger now. I mean, they're, coming up on races that they're going to have a chance at winning here, and this playoff bubble is really tight already.
Yeah, it just feels like a very weird year for the 9 team generally, just with everything that's kind of gone on. But it doesn't seem to be as automatic as it's been in years past. Not only for the 9 team, but just Hendrick generally. I mean, especially by this point of the season, you almost would have expected Bowman, obviously a weird year because of the injuries, but you would have expected, especially with this success that William Byron and Kyle Larson have had, that, there's something in that program, obviously. I think like you said, there's not many tracks where Hendrick's going to go to and not have a chance. So it's kind of been very odd to see Chase Elliott kind of struggle like this. I think, there's obviously something going wrong. I'm not sure if it's with, setup, if it's a confidence thing, if it's a team thing. I really can't, almost can't put a finger on it, because it doesn't necessarily seem like Chase Elliott is running all that badly, as much as it's just, he's just not the Chase Elliott that we would expect to see, which is kind of weird.
All right, NBC. I was trying to talk about more people than just Chase Elliott. You've got Allmendinger, you got Ty Gibbs in there even now. I mean, Justin Haley, with the super speedway now, multiple road courses coming. If you're second on the Chicago, it's not out of the question now. I mean, add Bubba Wallace, Michael McDowell, and Daniel Suarez. Those are the guys right now that are realistically in or around the cut line, as well as Allmendinger and Gibbs. But all it takes is one or two fluke winners in these next couple races with 3 road courses, I believe, and a super speedway coming up. All I'm saying is that, the playoff bubble seems like it's crazy now. I'm very curious to see what it looks like, what we're saying here in a month from now, because there's a lot of parity on the table for a season where, we're not going to get 17 winners like last year, but the field is just as strong as it was last year. It's very wide open.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Sorry to cut you off there, but it's 100% wide open. I think, obviously I'll say it. I've got a bias. I want Michael McDowell to do well. I think he keeps finding weird ways to kind of fall out of victories. I think he was running very well until the pit road incident today, and still ended up taking a gamble and making it work for him. But I don't know. It just feels like one of these days front row's going to have a good day at the racetrack. The other guy who kind of popped into my mind, and I'm glad that you said his name because it reminded me, was Ty Gibbs. I mean, the composure that Ty Gibbs showed today, I think it says a lot of how far he's come in a year. Because last year, he had some incidents where he was a little bit hot-headed and very retaliatory on the track in multiple instances. And there was all sorts of things today that went on that, he got jammed into the wall a few times. He ends up... he took some shots out there, and not once did he retaliate. He just kept his day together, and just to see the progress in a year, I think it's remarkable. We talk a lot about how these guys develop, but that's one of the things that really kind of stood out to me today, and you said his name, and it kind of reminded me, but just how much he's kind of grown up and been able to, it looked like he was very much able to keep his composure today, and something you want to see, especially moving forward.
Absolutely. It just feels like these results are getting better. You see Noah Gragson, on the other hand, just struggling week in and week out. It's just polar opposites there, and obviously, the car is a lot different. Gibbs is in a lot better equipment, but yeah, it is interesting to see that week by week progression there. Anything else that we missed here from this Atlanta race ad? Just to put a bow on it here. I know, again, lots to pack into, even for a race that was called short. Still have to catch our breaths for that one.
Yeah. I don't think we've got enough from, not too much more left on the bone for Atlanta. I think we've kind of chewed all the meat off of it. But Bob, let's just say that we made sure that we went out of our way to go ahead and see how last week's race winner did. And of course, SVG didn't race in NASCAR this week, but he was racing down in Supercars in Australia. Bob, I followed this race loosely, but I am still studying for the bar exam, so our Australian correspondent is going to take over this part of the podcast. Bob, how are Supercars?
Yeah, I'll take the brunt here. I know you're busy, so I tuned in for every lap on it. We are in America over here for our newfound Australian and New Zealand followers, but Friday night and Saturday night did stay up over past midnight, watched the Townsville races, I believe. God, I hope I said that right. Yeah, Townsville. I love how they did it, where you've got one race on the first night, and basically they do it all again the second night, from the sprint qualifying, the one lap qualifying. It's like F1 and NASCAR. This is, again, somebody who's never seen it before. So if you're watching it, you love Supercars, and I'm making a mockery. I'm so sorry, but the fact that it's almost like a blend of NASCAR and F1, from the broadcast all the way down to the track and the racing. Apparently the Fords have struggled this year, which, I guess some things don't change. It's that way in NASCAR, but Ford did get the win in the second race on Saturday night, so that was nice to see. And the Coca-Cola Camaro was the winner on the first night. So listen, I love the sponsorships. I recognize most of them as an American over here. It was cool to see the parody, but listen, the racing was great. Broadcast is fantastic. The races are within 2 hours, street style, beating and banging like NASCAR. I genuinely see where the next gen was modeled after this car. A lot of that street style car where you can push it more on the street corners, but you can still run it as a stock car. But listen, just the presentation of it, it was very unique to see. And then again, watching SVG, from our perspective here, he is that talented. It turns out, I mean, he can pass anyone over there. He started in the very back on the last race, the second race on Saturday, and then battles all the way up even after spinning out on the first lap, six seconds down. It comes back for fourth, and then at the very end, F1 rears its ugly head. The team orders come in, and they tell him to give his position to his teammate behind him for points reasons. So listen, can't escape it. The politics, the business of motorsport, is even in supercars, it turns out. So you'll never get that in NASCAR, you supercar fans, but I digress. Listen, another form of motorsports. I'm curious to see how many other people tuned in, because I don't think I was the only one here, Ad.
No, I don't think so at all. I had every intention of staying up and doing it, but like I said, I've been studying, so my life is simply not my own. I have buried my head in a good deal of legal knowledge. We're gonna try and pass this bar exam, Bob. So, other than that, I don't know, man. Obviously I don't think we've missed much as far as covering Atlanta. I think you have just a wonderful job of staying up late and making sure we're keeping track of our fans down under.
And watched the British Grand Prix this morning for F1 a few hours later. Listen, we've got you covered around the globe here. Adam might not, because Adam only sports NASCAR for the moment. But listen, international folks, I've got you covered. I've got you over here at Breaking Balls. Somebody cares about the rest of the globe here.
International Bob. We call him the United Nations of our podcast, making sure we stay globally focused, my good friend Bob Perry. So, well, episode 65 is in the books. Bob, because of the hard work that you put in watching, covering racing around the globe, I'll let you have the last words, pal.
I will do anything for a good F1 race, and I mean anything this year. Please.